You know, Julio is one of baseball's best young players. I think that's obvious. I don't know how many people are leaving this Mariners season going, I just don't believe in Julio Rodriguez. Like, I don't think he's good. And if you are one of those people, I wholeheartedly disagree with you. I do, though, Bump, think there are people leaving this season going, can Julio be his best in the biggest moments? That is a different question and a really important one, because I think I'm still trying to figure that out. I think that Julio is 22, and that's important context. You know, this is something that you can learn to do, that you can catch on to, that can change based on how your team is. Maybe you feel more confident about your team next year. Maybe you feel more confident about yourself and you deliver. But I think it became clear over the course of the season that outside of a really hot August, Julio kind of fell flat in really clutch moments. And it was so strange because there were other moments when he was at his brightest.
Yeah, I feel like, and again, I don't have the exact numbers or situations. This is just feeling and going off of what I remember. It felt like his rookie year, he came through more times than not when you needed that big hit. And it felt like this year, he was just off a bit. Baseball is already a game based off of failure, right? He's going, only stat that was crazy to me, I saw JP stats when the bases were loaded. He was like 10 for 16 or something like that. And maybe that's something that Julio can learn, the approach in those situations, because clearly the way that JP approaches those clutch situations, it works. He came through with a grand slam. I can imagine we had like a base hit, what was it, a few games ago that dropped over in left field where a run came in. JP has figured out how to be calm, cool, and collected in these moments. I think naturally Julio has to be putting pressure on himself. Julio wants to be great. The greats want to be great. The greats want to hit the grand slam in that moment. The greats want to get on base. So maybe it's this year was just a learning situation for Julio, where he can look back, you can reflect, talk to who you have to talk to, and change your approach mentally when you get into those moments, because you're going to need him. And God forbid he does not come up clutch. People are going to be all over Julio, and I don't want that for him.
Well, and what's interesting is his numbers, and again, it's tough because this is impacted by a really, really great August. His basic slash line with runners in scoring position, with bases loaded, those kinds of moments isn't bad at all in theory. So I was looking this up while we were answering the first question here for you, because I want to know what you think about this theory I'm going to throw your way. So, like with runners in scoring position, he was 299, 377, 521. He had an OPS over 1,000 when none on, no outs. Just, you just go up there. With runners in scoring position with 2 outs, he was 319. Again, there are fewer at-bats he had with runners in scoring position with 2 outs, 72 compared to, 160-something with none on and no outs. So that's going to be weighed a little bit. But, like, the basic number isn't horrible. But when you take it out and look at, like, September, right? When you take out August and you look at, like, okay, when you were with runners on in scoring position, when you had a hold on the AL West and when you needed to win, most of these 10 games, that's when it kind of fell apart. So it's to your point, to Bump's point for everyone, you can look up the numbers and you can be like, oh, but Bump, they were this. But what you're saying is, like, it mattered most in September. End of story.
Situations.
Yeah.
That's why you pay superstars. Because in a situation where you need them to come through, they come through more times than the average guy. And when we look at Julio's talents physically, and you look at JP's talents physically, you're going to take Julio every time.
Yeah.
Right? But JP has found a way to tap into that place mentally that calms everything down to where he's able to produce. I also give Julio benefit of the doubt. This is his second year. I mean, I don't know how clutch Trout was his second year. I don't know how clutch Shohei was. I don't know how clutch Aaron Judge was. All I have is Julio. And when I look at a 22-year-old, I think, all right, he's still growing. Even physically, he ain't going to stop growing until he's 24. He's going to put on like 10 more pounds, maybe 8, 10 more pounds, and look even more chiseled up. So he's still in the development process of his career. So it's all about what he takes from this and how he adjusts his approach. I'm using JP, and I'll probably use him for the rest of the year just because he changed almost everything about his life. He moved his family up here. He went to a different facility. He got bigger. He got stronger, right? But what allowed him to recognize that is that he's been in the league for a while. He understands, all right, these are the points where I need to get better. You're talking to Julio, a guy who was rookie of the year, got paid his rookie year, and doesn't have that many at-bats. Of course, he has a lot of at-bats, but not many at-bats in situations to where he can pull back from these experience and say, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to get better on. I think that first year was just a fairy tale. Like, man, I made it. I got my money. Mom and dad are good. I'm balling right now. Then you go into the second year, you're saying rinse and repeat. So now you got 2 years. You're saying that first year, boom, started slow. Everything started to work out for me. All right, low expectations. That second year, high expectations, started slow, started to figure it out. But when they needed me, I wasn't able to come through. So it's about the adjustments he makes this offseason. And if, from what I know of Julio, he's going to be honest with himself, and he's going to make those adjustments. So it's all about learning for Julio.
It reminds me of when you were talking about like your first season at Wazoo, or even, you know, when you were at Culver City, like if you were younger, where you were crazy talented and also young enough to not quite see the pressure of the situation. I feel like that was maybe Julio's first year.
Yeah.
And you can, in your second season, or when you recognize that pressure when you're older, think, well, I have so much fun playing this game, just be yourself. But we're human. And it still does something to you to go up and be like, oh, shoot, last year I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just out here having fun. This year, I know that I've been paid, that if I don't hit this grand slam in this bottom of the ninth moment, that we're done. I know that this team is counting on me. I know that we're our best player and that the rest of the baseball world is looking at me. And you can be as calm, cool, and collected as Julio is and still be affected by that.
Just look at some of the pitches he was swinging at late. I mean, there are so many high inside. Even my blind self wouldn't swing at those, but he has that pressure. And here's another thing, too, man. There was a kid, Fafita, for University of Arizona, when they played UW this past weekend, and he threw an interception, and it was a horrible interception. He's running forward. He tries to shovel pass it to a receiver. UW intercepts the ball, and everyone's getting on him, and I go, you can't blame that kid for trying to make a play. He's just trying his best to make a play. Now you got to learn from that. You can't do that again. I look at Julio and some of the pitches he was swinging at late. I go, he's just trying real hard to make a play. So the intentions are there. You just got to change the approach a little later in the season.
Yeah, I think the truth of the season and the truth of this conversation is that Julio in September, especially over that 10-game stretch, was not the Julio that this team needed him to be. But I also think an important takeaway is that he's 22 years old, and there's time to figure out if he can tap into that clutch moment and that clutch gene.
He's shown it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not like we haven't seen it.
Right.